Hey friends, it's your girl Mia. This is Mia Horror Stories. And tonight's story, the emergency alert said do not trust anyone who looks like you is told in darkness. The screen will stay black, so you can simply listen, imagine, and feel every moment without distraction. Trust me, the build-up matters, and the ending is where the real chill hides. So don't look away and don't leave early. The first thing that felt wrong wasn't dramatic. It was the kind of wrong you could talk yourself out of. The automatic doors at the Logan Airport arrivals level kept opening for nobody. They'd slide apart with their soft pneumatic hiss, spill a rectangle of January air onto the warm tile, then close again. Open, close, open, close. Every time they opened, the draft lifted the edge of a paper coffee sleeve someone had dropped, making it scoot and spin like it was trying to escape. I stood there with my phone in my hand and my backpack strap digging into my shoulder, watching it happen while my brain did what it always does: search for an explanation that wouldn't make me look ridiculous if I said it out loud. Motion sensor glitch, reflections, a bag rolling past, a maintenance issue that would get logged when someone felt like it. Behind me, a family argued quietly in Portuguese over a stroller. Someone's ringtone, tinny piano notes, kept restarting because they weren't answering. A floor buffer hummed somewhere out of sight, steady as a distant engine. Everything normal. Everyone tired. Nobody looking up long enough to notice the doors doing their little nervous tick. Then my phone buzzed like it had been waiting for me to pay attention. Emergency, alert, seek immediate shelter. Do not trust anyone who looks like you for a second. I didn't understand the words as words. They sat there, capital letters with a government font, as if I'd been sent a prank in the exact wrong wrapper. My thumb hovered over the screen. The alert had that sterile tone they use for hurricanes and chemical spills. No emoji, no link, just instructions that were both too clear and completely unusable. Don't trust anyone who looks like you. I looked up automatically, like the ceiling might clarify it. The doors opened again. Empty. A sharp exhale of cold air carried in the smell of jet fuel and wet wool. Somebody laughed near baggage claim, one quick bark that died fast, like they'd surprised themselves. I glanced around at faces the way you do when you've dropped something valuable, and your first irrational thought is that someone already took it. People had their own emergencies: lost luggage, crying toddlers, texts from someone waiting outside. A man in a red Sox cap scrolled with a frown. A woman in a business blazer stared at her lock screen like it had insulted her. And then, like a wave reaching shore, all the phones started buzzing. Not in unison, but close enough to make the sound overlap into a collective insect hum. A ripple went through the crowd. Heads lifted. People stopped walking. The stroller argument paused mid-sentence. The piano ringtone died, replaced by the harsh vibration tone most people only used for alarms. Someone said, "What the hell is this?" Another voice, sharp with annoyance, Is this a joke?" I swallowed and stepped back from the doors, because the doors were wrong and my phone was worse, and my body wanted a wall at my back. That's when I saw my reflection in the glass, on the right-hand side, airport, lighting flattening my face, making me look like a tired version of myself. Eyes too wide, cheeks slightly hollow from a week of travel and bad food. I'd always hated seeing myself in public glass. It made me aware of my posture, my expression, what my mouth did when I wasn't controlling it. I'd spent years training myself not to look nervous when I was nervous. I could feel my jaw working as I reread the alert. My mind tried to file it under technical glitch, but my pulse didn't listen. The alert had an authority that bypassed logic. You can ignore a stranger. It's harder to ignore the system you've been trained to treat as real. A tap landed on my shoulder. I flinched too fast, too obvious, and turned. A woman stood beside me, holding a small rolling suitcase by the handle, like she might swing it if needed. Her hair was short and damp at the ends, as if she'd rushed through a shower. She wore a puffer coat that looked new, still crisp, and her cheeks were flushed from the cold. "Sorry," she said, and her voice had that slightly breathless edge of someone who doesn't like talking to strangers, but has decided it's necessary. "Did you get that alert too?" She angled her phone toward me. Same message, same ugly sentence. My instinct was to nod and keep moving my private flaw on full display. Avoidance. If I could just step away from confusion, maybe it would resolve behind me. But the doors hissed again, and a small cluster of people closer to baggage claim started arguing louder, and I realized walking away wasn't the same as leaving. "Yeah," I said. My throat felt dry, like I'd been sleeping with my mouth open on the plane. "I got it. I'm Evan Mercer, 29 male. I live in Somerville, Massachusetts. I work for a small cybersecurity consulting firm that mostly does boring audits for hospitals and mid-sized companies that still run half their systems on something nobody remembers installing. I'm not a hero. I'm not a fighter. I'm the guy people call after the breach to explain what went wrong in words they can repeat to their boss. Without admitting, they ignored every warning. My everyday motive that day was painfully simple. Get home, get my car from the economy lot, shower, and sleep in my own bed. My private fear, one I never say out loud, is that when things go wrong, my first reaction is to freeze and calculate instead of acting. And someday that pause is going to cost someone more than embarrassment. The woman's eyes flicked from my face to the glass beside us, then back, like she'd already been thinking the same impossible thing. "I'm Nina Kessler, 34, female," she said, quick, as if naming herself made her more real. "I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm telling you. I don't like this. Me neither, I said, which was a useless understatement, but it steadied her a fraction. People often just want to hear their own fear echoed back. A man shoved past us with a rolling duffel, muttering into his phone. No, I'm telling you, it's on everyone's screen. It's not me. No, I'm not high. Jesus. A uniformed airport employee, blue shirt, badge clipped crooked, walked toward a growing knot of confused passengers and raised her hands. Everybody, we're aware of the alert, she called, voice practiced. Please remain calm. We're contacting. Her sentence got swallowed by the general noise. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Remain calm." It says, "Don't trust anyone who looks like you." What is that supposed to mean? Another person laughed, too loud, like they were trying to turn it into a joke by force. Maybe it means don't trust your doppelganger. Great. Fantastic. That word, doppelganger, hit the air and stuck there. I watched Nina's mouth tighten. She looked, suddenly, as if she regretted approaching me, and I felt the same regret mirrored back from my own chest. Not because she'd done anything, because the alert had turned every human interaction into a logic puzzle with missing pieces. The automatic doors kept opening. Open, close, open. A security officer appeared near the curbside, speaking into a radio, eyes darting. Not panicked, not calm, focused, like the kind of person who has a checklist and is irritated the world isn't matching it. I pulled my backpack strap higher and tried to think like I do at work. Assess, context, threat model. Emergency alerts can be spoofed, but not easily at scale. The wireless emergency alert system has controls. It's not like a group text. If this was real, something had triggered it, someone with access, or someone who had found a way around the access. If it wasn't real, then someone wanted everyone to believe it was, which meant the message itself was part of the event. Maybe it's a cyber thing, I said before I could stop myself. Talking to fill the space. Talking to convince myself I had a handle on it. Nina tilted her head. A cyber thing, a hack, I said. A fake alert. It's possible. Okay, she said, but her eyes didn't soften. But why that message? I didn't have an answer, and not having an answer made my stomach feel like it was dropping through an elevator shaft. A harsh chirp sounded from the ceiling, one of those airport announcements that usually tells you not to leave your bag unattended. The speakers clicked. Static hissed. For a heartbeat, the whole arrivals hall seemed to lean toward the sound. The voice that came through wasn't the usual warm recorded cadence. It was live, slightly too close to the microphone. A man breathing with the clipped tone of someone reading off a screen in a hurry. Attention, all passengers and staff in Terminal B arrivals, he said. This is Logan Airport Operations. We are temporarily restricting access to the roadway outside arrivals. Please remain inside the terminal and move away from all exterior doors and windows. We will provide further instructions shortly. The announcement ended with another burst of static, like the speaker system itself didn't like what it had just been asked to say. People started talking over each other, volume rising, as if everyone's fear needed to be louder than the next person's. A few tried the doors anyway, tugging on the handles when the automatic system paused. The doors stuttered, opened halfway, then closed again, as if someone behind the scenes had cut their power and they were dying in place. A child began to cry, not a dramatic wail, more a confused, exhausted sound, like an animal that doesn't understand why the routine has changed. Nina's fingers tightened around her suitcase handle until her knuckles paled. "I need to get to my sister," she said. "She's waiting outside." "Outside is restricted," I said, and heard how stupid that sounded. Restricted by whom? For what? She glanced toward the glass wall facing the curb, but it was crowded with people pressing close, trying to see through reflections and bodies. Beyond the glass, the light had shifted blue-white flashes that painted the ceiling in pulses. Police lights. Maybe an ambulance. Maybe something else. My phone buzzed again. Not another alert, just a text from my coworker, Jonah. "You at Logan. Heard something's going down." My hands were trembling enough that I almost dropped the phone. I shoved it into my pocket like it could make noise on its own. Nina looked at me. "What do we do?" That was the moment the story could have gone back to normal if I'd shrugged, if we'd both laughed, if someone official had stepped in and said, "False alarm, folks. Sorry for the inconvenience." But the doors had stopped their nervous opening. The announcement had been real. The lights outside weren't from a maintenance truck, and the alert still sat on my screen like a dare. A woman in a gray hoodie near us said into her phone, "No, Mom, I'm not leaving. They said stay inside." "Yes, I know, but..." Her voice cracked on the last word. On the other side of the glass, a figure moved along the curb line. For a second, I thought it was a police officer. Then I realized it was just a person in a dark coat walking fast, head down, weaving between stopped vehicles. The strange part wasn't the speed. It was the way a few people near the window recoiled like they'd recognized something they didn't want to name. Nina stepped closer to me without meaning to, shoulder almost brushing mine. "We can go deeper inside," I said, because it was the only option I could say out loud that didn't involve standing here like bait. Away from the windows. Find information. A gate agent. A desk. "Or we leave," she said, voice thin, "before whatever's outside comes inside." I stared at the glass, the reflections, the flashing blue-white light bleeding around the edges, and felt my brain split into two tracks. The part that wanted to obey the announcement, and the part that hated being corralled without understanding why. Nina's suitcase wheels squeaked as she shifted her weight. A choice. Stay with the crowd and trust the system, move, find a different route, a different explanation, maybe a way out that wasn't the obvious one. And hanging over it all, like a sentence you couldn't stop rereading: do not trust anyone who looks like you. I looked at Nina again, then at my own face in the glass, distorted by the airport's harsh lighting. Okay, I said, making a decision I wasn't sure I deserved to make. Let's move. And we started walking away from the doors into the thicker part of the terminal, where there were more people, more noise, and fewer places to see what was happening outside. Behind us, the speakers clicked again, as if someone was about to say something they didn't want to say. We didn't make it 10 steps before the terminal lighting flickered. Not a full blackout, just a dip, like someone briefly dimmed the world, then everything snapped back a shade brighter than before. The kind of flicker you normally ignore, except nobody ignored it this time. A ripple of sound followed it. Sharp inhales, a few curses, the squeal of a suitcase wheel dragged sideways. Power surge, Nina said, but it sounded like she was asking me to confirm gravity still worked. Probably, I said. Probably was doing a lot of work lately. We moved with the flow, deeper into the terminal, away from the glass wall and the doors. The air smelled different here, less jet fuel, more disinfectant, and fried food from a closed kiosk. The ceiling was lower, the lights harsher. A place designed to keep people moving, not lingering. Another announcement crackled overhead, half a sentence swallowed by static. Temporary suspension. Remain where you are, remain where you are, Nina muttered. They keep saying that. Ahead of us, a bottleneck had formed near a corridor that led toward the parking garage connector. A uniformed TSA agent stood sideways, arms out, blocking access. You can't go that way, he said, voice strained but controlled. Garage access is closed. Closed why? Someone demanded. Because it is, the agent said, and that answer, true but useless, poured gasoline on the mood. Voices rose. Someone shoved. The agent glanced back over his shoulder, like he was hoping backup would materialize if he stared hard enough. Nina slowed, then stopped. My car's in the garage, she said. If we can get there, we can just leave. We don't have to. She gestured vaguely back toward the arrivals hall. Whatever this is, I felt the pull of that logic immediately. Motion as safety. Escape equals control. It was the same instinct that made people try to drive out of wildfire zones at the same time and jam the roads until no one could move. Before I could say that, my phone vibrated again. This time, it wasn't a text. It was a missed call notification from my own number. I stared at the screen long enough that Nina noticed. What? She asked. I turned the phone so she could see. Her eyes flicked to the number, then to my face. That's not funny, she said, and then quieter. Is that part of it? I didn't answer, because my brain had slipped into the cold, analytical mode it uses when panic gets too loud. Phone number spoofing is trivial. Anyone with the right tools can make it look like a call came from anywhere. That explanation fit neatly, too neatly. I checked the timestamp. 30 seconds ago. Did it ring? Nina asked. No, I said. It just logged it, she swallowed. My sister tried to FaceTime me earlier. It didn't go through. Said connection failed. We stood there, the crowd pressing around us, and I realized something that made my stomach drop. The cellular network felt wrong. My signal bars were there, but data crawled. Messages hung in that gray limbo between sent and failed. Hey, a man said sharply behind us. You two gonna move? We moved. We ducked into a side corridor near a closed Hudson News. Its metal gate, pulled down halfway like it, had been interrupted mid-panic. The corridor was quieter. The noise of the main terminal muffled into a low roar. A janitor's cart sat abandoned against the wall, one wheel still slowly spinning, squeaking once per rotation. Nina leaned against the wall and exhaled hard. Okay, we need a plan. My flaw pressed in on me then, heavy and familiar. The urge to think instead of act, to model scenarios until one emerged clean and safe. What kind of plan? I asked, buying time. Information, she said immediately. We need to know what's actually happening. If this alert is real, if it's not, if there's a fire or a shooter or, she stopped herself. I don't want to spiral, but standing here isn't helping. She was right. And also, standing here felt marginally safer than moving without knowing where. A man staggered into the corridor from the other end, breathing hard. He was in his early 40s, beard untrimmed, jacket half-zipped like he'd dressed in a hurry. He slowed when he saw us, then raised his hands slightly, palms out. A peace gesture. Hey, he said. Sorry. Just do you know where the bathrooms are? They shut the ones near baggage claim. Down that way, I said, pointing. He nodded, then hesitated. His eyes lingered on my face for half a beat too long. You look like, he trailed off, shook his head. Never mind. Bad timing. He hurried past us, footsteps echoing. Nina watched him go. Did you see that? Yeah, I said. He was about to say you look like someone. I didn't like the way she said it, like she was testing the words before trusting them. A sharp bang sounded from somewhere above us. Not a gunshot, more like a metal door slamming shut. The lights flickered again, longer this time. When they came back, a few ceiling panels near us stayed dark. Power's not stable, Nina said. No, I agreed. And if it goes out completely, emergency lights, she said. They have backups. Sure, I said. As long as those backups aren't affected by whatever's causing this. She looked at me. You're doing the thing, I asked. The overthinking thing, she said. Not accusing. Observant. You're trying to solve it in your head instead of doing something. I opened my mouth to argue, then closed it. Because she was right, and because arguing would waste time we didn't have. Okay, I said. Action. We find an airport desk with a live person. Operations. Police. Someone who knows more than the announcements. And if they tell us to remain where we are, she asked. Then we decide if we listen, I said, and felt the weight of that choice settle between us. We stepped back into the flow, angling toward a Delta service desk I could see ahead. The line was already long, people clustered tight, voices raised. A woman behind the counter spoke into a headset, nodding rapidly, eyes flicking between screens. As we got closer, my phone vibrated again. This time it rang. The screen lit up with my own name. Incoming call, Evan Mercer. Nina grabbed my wrist before I could stop her. "Don't," she said. The ringing filled the space between us, absurdly loud to my ears, even though it was just a phone. "It's not real," I said automatically. "It's spoofed." "Then why is it happening now?" she shot back. "Why you?" The call stopped. A voicemail notification popped up immediately. I didn't open it. Around us, other people's phones rang. Not all at once. Staggered. A woman gasped and dropped hers. A man answered and immediately went pale, hanging up without a word. "What are you hearing?" someone shouted. "No idea," another voice said. It sounded like me, that word again. Like. The Delta agent slammed her palm on the counter. "Everyone, please," she shouted. "We are experiencing a systems issue. Remain calm. Do not answer any calls that seem suspicious." "Suspicious how?" someone yelled back. The agent hesitated. Just a fraction, long enough to notice. "Just don't," she said finally. Nina's grip tightened on my wrist. "Evan," she said quietly. "We need to go. Now, go where?" I asked, even as my body leaned toward hers. "The service stairwell," she said. "I saw one back there. If the power goes out and people panic, this," she gestured at the crowd, "is going to get bad." She wasn't wrong. The density of bodies, the rising volume, the unknown, panic, was a spark looking for oxygen. I hesitated. Stairs meant isolation. No cameras. No easy help. And then my phone buzzed again. A text preview slid down from the top of the screen. "From Evan Mercer, I'm standing right behind you." Nina saw it. I didn't need to show her. She stepped back, eyes scanning the crowd, then locked onto my face again. Searching for something. Confirmation. Doubt. "Okay," she said, voice tight. "Okay, this is the choice." Behind us, someone screamed short, sharp, and the lights went out completely. The emergency lights kicked in a second later, bathing the terminal in red. The scream wasn't alone anymore, and the service stairwell door, just 20 feet away, clicked as if someone had unlocked it from the inside. The service stairwell smelled like dust and old paint, the kind of smell you only notice when you're already on edge. The door swung inward on heavy hinges, then slammed shut behind us with a sound that made Nina jump. Red emergency lights cast everything in a low, pulsing glow. The steps descended in a tight concrete spiral, railing chipped and cold under my palm. A sign on the wall said stair B3, authorized personnel only, the arrow pointing down. Down or up? Nina asked. I hesitated for half a second too long. Up meant offices, control rooms, maybe people who knew things. Down meant tunnels, utilities, garages, isolation. The hesitation cost us. Footsteps pounded from the terminal side of the door. Someone slammed into it, rattling the handle. Open it, a voice shouted. Male, panicked. They're saying the door held. The footsteps multiplied. Down, I said, and we went. First attempt. Find authority underground. The stairwell spat us out into a service corridor that ran parallel to the arrivals level, separated from the public terminal by concrete and metal doors every 50 feet. Overhead pipes dripped slowly, each drop a tiny metronome ticking time forward. The air was cooler here, damp. We moved fast, shoes squeaking on the polished concrete. My lungs burned, not from distance, but from adrenaline breathing too shallow. A sign on the wall showed a crude map. Service access, garage/utilities/operations. Operations, Nina said. That's what we want. We followed the arrows, turning left, then right, then through a fire door that banged loudly enough to make us freeze. No footsteps followed. For the moment, we were alone. We found an operations office tucked behind a chain-link gate. The lights were on inside. 2 desks, monitors glowing, empty. Hello, Nina called. No answer. A radio crackled on one desk, then went silent. I leaned in, scanning the screens through the wire. CCTV feeds, some frozen, some live. Terminal B arrivals washed in red emergency light. The curbside feed flickered, then stabilized. Police cruisers angled awkwardly, blocking lanes. People milling where they shouldn't be. And then, on one feed, I saw something that made my chest tighten. A man standing near the arrivals doors. Same jacket as me. Same backpack slung over one shoulder. Same haircut, same slouch. For one electric second, my brain screamed, that's me. Then the feed jumped, pixelated. When it cleared, the man was gone. Evan, Nina said. I realized I'd stopped breathing. Camera lag, I said automatically. Low bandwidth, compression artifacts. Was that someone who looks like me? I said. The words tasted wrong. Or looked like me on a bad feed. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I didn't look. A crash echoed down the corridor. Metal on concrete, followed by shouting. They're coming, Nina said. Yeah, I said. We need another route. We hadn't solved anything. We'd learned one thing. The cameras were compromised or unreliable. Authority wasn't waiting underground to explain this. We were still blind. Second attempt. Reach the garage and leave. We doubled back, took a different branch toward the garage. The corridor sloped downward now, the ceiling lower. The smell shifted, oil, rubber, exhaust. The garage entrance gate was half lowered, like the Hudson News gate upstairs. a procedural failure, not a barricade. Someone had tried to shut it and either lost power or lost nerve. We ducked under. The garage was chaos in a different register, sound swallowed by concrete, red emergency lights casting long shadows between parked cars. Car alarms chirped intermittently, triggered by the power fluctuations. It sounded like nervous birds. Nina headed straight for a blue Subaru halfway down the row. "My car," she said, relief sharp enough to hurt. We reached it. She fumbled the key fob. "Nothing." "Try the door," I said, locked. She tried again. Still nothing. "Battery?" I asked. "No," she said. "It was fine this morning." I scanned the garage. Other people had the same idea. A man yanked at his door, then kicked the tire. A woman stood with her forehead pressed to her windshield, phone clutched uselessly. The garage lights flickered, then dimmed further. Emergency lights here were weaker, spaced farther apart. "This is a systems thing," I said, more to myself. Power plus access control plus cellular. Someone pulled a big switch. Nina leaned against her car, hands shaking. So we're stuck. Not completely, I thought. The garage had ramps, exits, but police cruisers blocked the main lanes, and the gates were dead. My phone buzzed again. This time, a voicemail auto-played before I could stop it. My voice came out of the speaker, breathing, close to the mic. "Evan," it said, "don't turn around." Nina slapped the phone out of my hand. It skidded across the concrete and stopped near a tire. "That's not funny," she said, voice breaking. "Who is doing this?" I swallowed hard. Someone with access and a sense of timing. A shape moved behind a pillar at the far end of the garage. My heart spiked. "Hey," someone shouted. "Is that?" The shape stepped into the light. It was a janitor pushing a cart. He blinked at us, startled, then raised his hands apologetically. "Sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to scare anyone." The fear drained a notch, leaving embarrassment and anger in its place. Misdirection. My brain labeled it with relief. "Where's security?" Nina asked him. He shook his head. "All over the place. They told us to shelter," but he trailed off, eyes flicking to the darkened gate. "You should go back inside," back where the crowd was panicking. We'd failed again. The garage wasn't an exit. It was a trap with cars instead of people. A siren wailed outside, muffled through concrete. Then came the sound that made the decision for us. A heavy metal gate at the far end of the garage began to descend, grinding loudly. Slowly, irreversibly. People shouted and ran toward it, but it was too far, too slow. When it hit the ground, the echo boomed through the garage like a judge's gavel. "Okay," Nina said, eyes wide. "We can't stay here." "No," I said. "We go up, but not the way we came." Tightening the trap, we found another stairwell marked utilities/mezzanine. Narrower, no windows. The red light here pulsed slower, making everything feel underwater. Halfway up, my calf cramped hard enough that I stumbled. Nina caught my arm. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I lied. My leg throbbed. Adrenaline had been masking it. At the mezzanine level, the door wouldn't open. Nina shoved it again, harder. "Locked," she said. I looked at the access panel, dark, no power. Behind us, footsteps echoed up the stairwell. Not a crowd. One set. Unhurried. My phone buzzed in my pocket, insistent. Nina stared at me. "Don't." The footsteps stopped just below the landing. A voice drifted up. Calm, familiar. "Evan," it said. "We need to talk." My heart hammered so hard it hurt. The voice sounded like me. Not a recording, not distorted. Live, close. Nina backed away from the door, eyes locked on my face, then flicking down the stairs. "That's not you," she whispered. "I know," I said, but knowing didn't make my hands stop shaking. The door behind us, the one leading back down, clicked, then swung open. Light flooded in from below as the emergency lights there surged brighter. We were pinned between a locked door and a voice wearing my sound. The mezzanine door shuddered as the power surged again. The lock disengaged with a dull thunk. The door creaked open. I grabbed Nina's hand. We ran through and slammed it shut behind us, jamming a fire extinguisher handle through the bar just as something hit it from the other side. The impact rattled the frame. Whatever or whoever was down there, retreat was no longer an option. The mezzanine smelled like hot dust and ozone. Rows of servers lined one wall behind glass, airport systems, networking equipment. The quiet spine that made everything else work. The red emergency lights reflected off the glass, doubling our shadows, so it looked like more people were here than actually were. I dragged a breath into my chest and forced myself to stand upright. My calf burned where it had cramped, the muscle tight as wire. Nina leaned against the door we'd jammed, listening. Nothing. No pounding. No voice. For 3 seconds, the silence felt like mercy. Then the PA speakers crackled. Not the public announcement voice. No preamble, just sound, my breathing amplified, close, slightly out of sync with my chest. Nina's head snapped toward me. Yeah, I said. "I know." The breathing stopped. My voice came next. Calm, reasonable. The tone I used at work when I needed someone to trust me. "Nina, it's okay. He's confused. I'm up here." Her eyes slid to my face, searching for tells. Sweat, tremor, anything. "Don't listen," I said louder than I meant to. "It's routing through the system. The servers. They are." A sharp pain lanced up my leg as I shifted my weight. I sucked in air through my teeth. "Evan," the voice said gently, "you hurt your leg on the stairs. You don't have to keep running." Nina flinched. "How does it know that?" she whispered. "Because I told my phone." My brain answered before I could stop it. Step counter, health data, microphone, camera, everything I'd ever let collect me. "We shut it down," I said. "We pull power." Nina looked at the server racks. Won't that? Yeah, I said. It'll knock out systems. More chaos. Another pause. A lull where the weight of the choice settled. The door behind us rattled, not slammed, tested. Once, twice. A keycard beeped. Evan, the voice said, closer now. Not through the speakers, through the door, my voice, wearing a body. Open up. Before you hurt someone. Nina backed away from the door, hands up, as if she might catch something thrown. You said don't trust anyone who looks like you, she said to me. What if that means exactly this, I said. Someone using me as the vector. The keycard beeped again. Red light. Denied. A shoulder hit the door. Harder this time. The fire extinguisher handle creaked but held. Okay, Nina said, decisions snapping into place. We pull power. I limped toward the server racks, fingers numb. A big red emergency shutoff sat on the wall, plastic cover intact. The kind of thing you're only supposed to touch if you're sure. Once we do this, I said, we lose lights, locks, everything. Then do it, she said, before it learns something else. Another hit to the door. The frame shuddered. Plaster dust drifted down like gray snow. I flipped the plastic cover and slammed the switch. The servers died with a sound like a collective sigh. The red lights cut out. Darkness swallowed us. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. No voice, no pounding. Just the faint hum of emergency power rerouting somewhere deep in the building. Then a backup light flickered on dim yellow, casting long, ugly shadows. The door went quiet. We stood there, breathing hard, waiting for the other shoe. Seconds passed. A minute. I think, Nina started. The door exploded inward. Wood and metal burst apart as someone threw their full weight against it. The extinguisher handle snapped free, clanging uselessly across the floor. He stumbled through, off balance, catching himself on the frame. He was wearing my jacket. My backpack hung off one shoulder. My face stared back at me, flushed and real, and wrong in a way that made my stomach flip. Not identical. Closer up, the differences showed. A scar near the eyebrow I didn't have. A nose broken once, healed crooked. But from a distance, from a screen, from a glance in panic. Enough. He straightened, eyes locking onto mine. No smile, no theatrics, just intent. Hi, he said, in my voice, out of his mouth. Nina screamed. I moved without thinking, my freeze response, finally overridden by pure animal reflex. I grabbed the loose fire extinguisher from the floor and swung. He ducked. The canister clipped his shoulder instead of his head. The impact jarred my arms painfully, but it knocked him sideways into the server glass. It cracked, spiderwebbing. He recovered fast, faster than me. He lunged, tackling me low. We hit the floor hard. The breath left my lungs in a sharp grunt. Pain flared in my leg as his knee slammed into it. Up close, he smelled like sweat and metal, and the same cheap soap I used at home. You should have stayed put, he said, straddling me, hands on my throat. His grip tightened, not crushing, controlled, like he knew exactly how much pressure to use. My vision tunneled. I heard Nina shout my name, distant. I clawed at his wrist, useless. My fingers brushed something hard clipped to his belt, a radio. I ripped it free and smashed it against his jaw. Bone met plastic with a wet crack. He roared, grip loosening just enough. I sucked in air, coughing, and drove my knee up into his ribs. Felt something give. He rolled off me, gasping. Nina was there, swinging the extinguisher with both hands, pure fury and terror. It connected with his forearm. He cried out, dropping to one knee. "Run," I yelled. She hesitated just a second, then bolted toward the far exit. He surged up and grabbed her jacket. I staggered to my feet and slammed into him, all my weight, all my pain. We crashed into the cracked server glass. It shattered completely this time, raining shards. He slipped, fell. I fell with him. We hit the edge of the mezzanine railing together. For a frozen moment, we balanced there, bodies tangled, gravity waiting. He looked at me then, really looked. "You don't even know how easy it was," he said. Blood ran from his mouth, dark in the dim light. "People will believe anything if it sounds like them." His hand scrabbled for purchase on my jacket. I did the math in my head in a flash that felt endless. If I pulled him up, he'd kill me, or Nina, or someone else. If I didn't, my legs screamed as I shifted my weight. "I know," I said, and pushed. He fell. The sound when he hit the concrete below was final. Heavy, wrong. I sagged against the railing, shaking so hard my teeth clicked. Nina's footsteps echoed back. She stopped beside me, eyes wide, face streaked with dust and tears. "Is he?" she asked. I nodded once. Sirens wailed closer now. Real ones, not muffled. We stood there, neither of us touching the other, staring down at the still shape wearing my face. The lights flickered back on white this time, harsh, unforgiving. And somewhere deep in the building, my phone buzzed. I didn't look. The paramedic kept asking me to rate my pain on a scale of 1 to 10, and every number felt like a lie. I sat on the cold concrete floor of the mezzanine, with my back against the railing. A foil blanket tucked around my shoulders like an apology. My throat burned when I swallowed. A bruise was already blooming there, fingertips shaped, purple creeping into yellow. My calf throbbed in a slow, insistent rhythm that matched the distant thud of boots and the murmur of radios. "Just a little pinch," the paramedic said, and then the needle slid in and the world softened at the edges. Not gone, just padded. Below us, on the arrivals level, the airport was waking back up in pieces. White lights on, then escalators, then the dull roar of voices returning to something like normal volume. Every few minutes, someone laughed too loud, brittle. Relief had a sound, and it wasn't pretty. Nina sat a few feet away, wrapped in her own blanket, hands clenched so tightly the knuckles were white. A police officer crouched in front of her, speaking gently, pen moving across a notepad. She nodded at the right places, shook her head at others. Her eyes never went to the edge of the mezzanine. When the officer came to me, I told it straight, as straight as you can tell something that still feels like it happened to someone else. The alert, the calls, the voice, the man. I didn't dramatize. I didn't soften. I learned a long time ago that details survive better than feelings when you're trying to make yourself believed. The officer listened without interrupting. He had kind eyes and a face that suggested he'd seen enough versions of the worst day of someone's life to recognize the shape of it. "You did what you had to do," he said when I finished. I nodded because that was easier than answering. They took my statement twice. Once on the mezzanine, once downstairs in a makeshift interview room near baggage claim that smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant. The questions stayed the same. The answers didn't. In between, a doctor shined a light in my eyes and pressed on my leg until I hissed. "Severe cramp, maybe a minor tear," she said. "You'll walk." "Not today." They wrapped my calf, gave me crutches I didn't want, and told me to watch for dizziness, headaches, anything that felt off. Everything felt off. I didn't tell them that. Nina found me again while I was waiting for discharge papers. She moved carefully, like her body had learned a new set of rules and wasn't sure which ones applied yet. "They are letting people leave in stages," she said. "My sister's still outside. She's okay." "Good," I said, and meant more than the word could carry. We stood there awkward, the way people do after surviving something together when there isn't a script for what comes next. "They said his name," she said finally. "The man's, not yours. He wasn't you, I know," I said, and I did. Rationally. Viscerally was another matter. "They think he had access," she went on. "Contractor credentials. Knew the systems. Knew how to scare people into staying put." "And the alert?" I asked. She shrugged. "Under investigation." That phrase had already started to feel like a blanket someone throws over a mess they don't want to look at yet. We exchanged numbers, hands hovering awkwardly before we hugged, brief, careful, like we were afraid of breaking each other. Then she left, wheeling her suitcase with a slight limp of her own, shoulders hunched as if the world had learned a new way to surprise her. When I finally made it outside, dawn was just beginning to thin the dark. The police lights were gone. The roadway looked like any other early morning at the airport. Tired faces, idling cars, the smell of exhaust and coffee. Ordinary, patched back together. My car was still in the garage. Dead battery. A tow truck driver gave me a sympathetic look while he jump-started it. "Rough night?" he asked. "You could say that," I said, and that was the end of it. At home, my apartment felt unfamiliar in the way hotels do when you've been gone too long. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my phone, which I'd powered off somewhere between the interview room and the curb. I turned it on. No new alerts. No missed calls. Just the lock screen photo I'd set years ago. A nondescript skyline I'd taken from a bridge because it felt safer than a picture of myself. I showered until the water ran cold, watched bruises surface in the mirror like delayed reactions, wrapped my leg, drank a glass of water I didn't taste. Sleep came in fragments. In the days that followed, the story settled into the version people could handle. A security breach, a lone actor, a tragic confrontation. They didn't use my name in the articles. They didn't use his. They talked about the suspect and the victim and the passenger who intervened. The alert was described as malicious and misleading. The impersonation as sophisticated but not unprecedented. My firm put me on leave, not because they had to, because they were decent. Friends texted, then called, then stopped when I didn't know how to answer without hearing my own voice somewhere in the line. At night, I started leaving a lamp on in the living room, not because I was afraid of the dark, because shadows had learned too many tricks. 2 weeks later, I got my phone back from evidence. Everything was intact. Photos, messages, apps, except for one thing. My health app showed a workout logged at Logan Airport at 2:41 a.m. Distance walked. Heart rate recorded. I stared at the timestamp until my eyes ached. It could have been a glitch, a sensor error, a phantom reading. I deleted it. Life resumed its shape. Work emails, grocery lists, the quiet relief of being anonymous again. But sometimes, when my phone rings and I don't recognize the number, my hand hesitates. And once, late at night, half asleep, I could swear I heard my own breathing coming from somewhere just behind me. I turned on the light. There was nothing there. That's tonight's story. If it gives you chills, make sure to like, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and tap the bell so you never miss what's coming next. And if you're still brave enough, there are more dark tales waiting for you right here on the channel. Go watch another if you dare. Hey friends, it's your girl Mia. This is Mia Horror Stories. And tonight's story, The Forest That Follows You Home, is told in darkness. The screen will stay black, so you can simply listen, imagine, and feel every moment without distraction. Trust me, the build-up matters, and the ending is where the real chill hides. So don't look away, and don't leave early. The water from the bathroom faucet smelled like the creek at Jones Creek, day use, cold, metallic, and a little like coins left in moss. I let it run over my palm, waiting for the chlorine bite I was used to in Portland tap, but the scent clung. A hair-thin green thread slid past my fingers and curled around the drain. I told myself it was nothing, work on the pipes up on 50th, a flake of something from the aerator, the power of suggestion after an afternoon in the woods. Still, I thumbed the faucet off and listened. The house quieted to its usual refrigerator hum, a bus sighing at the stop 4 blocks down, The neighbor's motion, light clicking on, then off. No stream, no birds, just the house. Normal, mostly. Nina Kowalski, 34, female graphic designer, who runs the same 3 neighborhood routes until the map looks like a child's scribble. She counts things when she's nervous, steps, breaths, the seconds between a sound and its echo, and has a private fear of losing control in public places, the kind that makes her stand near exits in crowded rooms. I carried my trail shoes to the kitchen and set them on a flattened Trader Joe's bag to dry. They left a wet outline that smelled like cedar chips and dirt. Jamie's shoes weren't there. His bike leaned at an angle near the back door like it had arrived in a hurry, and then thought better of leaving. Jamie Reed, 35, male, high school science teacher, who alphabetizes spices and keeps spare batteries in a labeled shoebox. He loves lists, hates wasted motion, and is privately embarrassed by how much he wishes people would do things his way without being asked. "Hey," he called from the living room. The TV was on mute. A soccer match looping replays with the tinny roar turned to subtitles. "Did you clean the drain in the tub recently?" "Why?" I asked, already picturing that green thread winding itself into a real explanation, something we could joke about later. I walked in, still in my damp base layer, and he looked at me over the rim of his mug with that teacher's face, concern dressed as curiosity. "It's just the water smelled weird," he said, like we were back on the Wilson River, and there was grit. I didn't want to clog it, so I left it. "We probably tracked silt home," I said. "It'll settle." He nodded, but his eyes dipped to my hands. I was rubbing my thumb into my palm like I could erase the feeling of that thread. I flattened my hands on my thighs. There was still some light slipping in through the blinds, that Pacific Northwest evening that stretches and stretches and then drops off a cliff. The kitchen window showed the tight rectangle of our yard, patchy grass, a compost bin with a lid that never quite sat right, the back fence where ivy was winning a quiet war against slats. A breeze pushed the drier leaves of the ivy and made a papery noise. I imagined the trail again, the way the hemlock fronds hang like curtains, the slippery log at mile 4, the sound of our laughter when Jamie went in ankle deep and pretended to drown. "Did you take the trash down to the curb?" I asked. He grimaced. "I forgot. I'll run it out now before it gets too late." "Check the alley light," I said. The last 2 nights, it had hiccuped between on and off like it couldn't decide if our stretch of S.E. Duke was worth the wattage. My brain does these little latches. Alley light flickering equals, someone could lurk equals. I don't go out back without checking equals. I notice the world in a way that feels like a job I didn't apply for. He kissed my damp hair, grabbed the bag, and stepped into the yard. The back door closed with that familiar whump of imperfect weather stripping. Through the window, I watched him lift the bin lid, pause, and then angle his head like he was listening. He always listens before he moves. It's a teacher thing and a Jamie thing. Outside, the motion light didn't click on. Instead, somewhere beyond our fence, the uneasy rasp of a dragging sound. Not metal, something softer, like a branch against asphalt. It's the city. Branches fall. People move furniture at weird hours. Maybe it's Ruth's kids bringing in their gardening stuff. Ruth Doyle, 68, female, retired postal worker, who walks the block before dawn and after dinner, and has trained her terrier to roll over when she whispers, "Special delivery." She keeps a running list of license plates that park too close to her driveway, and trusts paper more than people's memories. Jamie turned toward the sound, and then toward me, a pantomime conversation through glass. "You hear that?" I shrugged and held my phone up like, "Want me to call someone?" He shook his head and mouthed, "It's fine," then lifted the bin and pulled it down the alley toward the curb. The dragging sound continued for a few seconds after he stopped, then stopped. I counted. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 bus at the corner coughs to life. A gate clicks, footsteps on concrete. A laugh 2 houses over. The damp exhale of the evening settling. The kind of quiet that tells you everything is there. You just can't see it at once. I went back to the bathroom and twisted off the faucet cap. A pinch of grit, a smear of green I told myself was residue from my hands. The mirror fogged a little where the shower had run earlier in it. My face looked like I'd been rubbed out and redrawn. I rinsed the cap in a bowl and tipped it into the sink. The grit made a tiny scratchy sound that felt louder than it was. Back in the living room, Jamie had left the back door unlatched. He does that sometimes when he plans to go right back out. I slid the bolt because I don't like surprises. Control is a habit for me, not a strategy. On the coffee table, his lesson planner lay open to a week, mapped in neat boxes. Seed lab germination trays, Tuesday red. Field trip permission slips due, Wednesday. A single weed seed clung to the edge of the paper. I flicked it away, and it stuck to my finger like a burr. "Hey, Ruth," Jamie's voice from the alley. Friendly. The way he says her name like they're co-conspirators in a neighborhood that refuses to keep the same recycling rules 2 weeks in a row. I stepped to the window again. Ruth stood by the chain link where our alley meets her driveway, wearing the blue windbreaker she likes when it's almost rain. Her terrier, Pepper, sniffed the bin wheels like they were gossip. "You hear that dragging?" Ruth asked, voice raised just enough to carry. "Thought someone was moving a fallen limb." "Yeah," Jamie said. "Probably from the storm last week. I can check after I bring the compost back." "It's not storm wood," Ruth said. "It's green. You can smell it." She inhaled dramatically, and Pepper sneezed. I opened the door and stepped onto the back stoop. The air had that damp sawdust smell of a hardware store garden center. Not unpleasant, just out of place on a street of concrete and car oil, and someone always grilling something. "I think it's the ivy," I said, pointing to the fence. "It's growing into the alley. The city's been on us to trim it. Ruth nodded like she'd made a note and would follow up with a letter in her precise, slanted handwriting. The light's out again, she said. City won't come until Monday, I bet. We have headlamps somewhere, Jamie said. Left over from Crater Lake. That was 2 years ago, I said, because I count things, and time is a thing. Batteries are fresh, he said, not because he knew, but because that's how he talks the world into behaving. He set the compost back against the fence and patted Pepper's head. Pepper sneezed again and shook a paw. Something tapped from the side of the house. Once, twice. The kind of sound branches make when they find a new place to touch. Jamie tilted his head, and I felt that catch in my throat that isn't fear. Not exactly, more like attention waking up all at once. I'll go look, Jamie said. Ruth, are you going in? I'll watch, she said. Pepper needs stimulation. Jamie laughed and went for the side gate, the one that sticks if you don't lift as you pull. It scraped an old groove in the dirt. I stayed by the back door. If I follow, I'm useful. If I stay, I can call if something isn't fine. Control is a habit. I could feel the damp through my socks from the stoop. I hate wet socks. He disappeared along the house, and I heard his shoes brush the ferns we planted and then neglected. Another tap. Then a pause. Then his voice. Nina, did you bring the trekking pole in? No, I said. I left them in the trunk. There was a clatter, then silence that wasn't empty, more like the pause when a song you know too well skips and you wait for your part. The motion light stayed off. The alley's darkness pooled. What is it? Ruth called. It's probably nothing, Jamie said, which is what he says when he's narrating calm for other people. But our side gate was latched from the outside. By who? I didn't ask. The question felt like a match you don't strike unless you want the sulfur everywhere. Ruth made a small HMPH and shifted Pepper to her other hand. I've got my phone if you want to, she started, but she didn't finish because we all heard it then. A soft rush like leaves dragged across drywall. Inside the wall, or on it. I watched a sliver of fern frond slide under the gap at the bottom of the gate and retreat as if breathing. Small and explainable. Wind, vines, a prank. All our brains lined up explanations like dominoes. Still, my fingers were already counting. 1, the headlamps in the hall closet top shelf. 2, the neighbor's porch camera that always catches raccoons. 3, the trail map app on my phone, still open to a breadcrumb path from the Wilson River Trail. 4, the bolt on the back door, smooth under my hand. Jamie looked back at me. We had that shared moment married people get, where the choice is a quick fork. Go inside and lock it all and pretend it's nothing. Or walk the side yard and the alley to the street and check every latch and fence and coil of hose until we could draw a line around the unknown and call it known. Headlamp or house? He asked. I picked up the shoebox with the batteries and felt its familiar weight. The alley was a little darker now. Jamie came back around the side of the house with the headlamp already strapped on, beam bouncing across the siding. The shoebox of batteries sat heavy in my hands. Ruth shifted from foot to foot, Pepper whining like he wanted to be anywhere else. "It's not wind," Jamie said. The latch wasn't just closed, it was hooked. From the outside, someone did it. He said it low, steady teacher voice, the kind that calms kids when the fire alarm goes off in chemistry. But his eyes flicked to mine, quick, like punctuation. "Could have been last week," I said. "Could have been the meter guy. Could have been tonight," he cut in. "Because I've been out there 100 times, and I know when something's off." Ruth made a noise in her throat, half agreement, half nerves. "This alley," she said. "We've had prowlers before. Kids. Men rummaging in recycling bins. Not violent, but looking." Jamie tightened the strap on his headlamp. "I'll walk it. Make sure no one's hanging around." My stomach turned. Control is my drug, and this was the opposite. "You're not going alone." "I don't need backup," he said. "It's 30 yards of asphalt." "You don't go alone," I repeated. My voice was sharper than I meant, and Ruth gave me a side look like I'd just broken some unspoken neighborhood etiquette. Pepper barked once at the fence, ears flat. Jamie sighed. "Fine, both of us, quick. Ruth, if you don't mind." "I'll stay here," she said, already pulling her phone from her jacket. "Pepper'll let me know if anything comes near." The gate creaked as Jamie lifted it clear of the groove and swung it open. The alley yawned dark, no light from the busted pole, just the ghost of street lamps at either end. It smelled faintly of gasoline and wet leaves. My socks clung cold to my arches. "Stay close," Jamie said. Even though I was already so close, I could hear his breathing shift with each step. The beam of his headlamp cut a narrow tunnel. Fence, ivy, the backs of recycling bins, a coil of orange hose, all wet-edged and gleaming. 10 steps down, I heard it, not dragging this time. A hollow pop, like a branch cracking under weight. Jamie froze, beam jerking. "Raccoon," he whispered. "Could be." "Could be," I echoed, but my mind ticked. 1 sound of a step, not a scurry. 2, the gate was hooked, not blown shut. 3, my tap water smelled like creek moss. 4, "Don't," Jamie said, catching my wrist. "Not now. He knows when I'm counting." We reached the compost bin, lid still tilted. Jamie knelt, swept the beam along the ground. Fresh drag marks through the grit, lines curving toward the fence. Not heavy, not random, deliberate. "Jesus," he muttered, "like someone pulled something through here." "Like what?" He didn't answer. The alley stretched ahead, darker still. My heart was a metronome gone wrong. Behind us, Ruth called softly, "You see anything?" Jamie hesitated, then raised his voice. "Just the ivy. Looks like it broke loose." A lie too quick. The beam swung, landed on something pale at the base of the fence. I leaned in. A shoelace, muddy, frayed at the end, Not ours, not Ruth's. Wrong place, wrong angle, tied in a knot too tight for chance. Jamie pocketed it without a word. We reached the end of the alley. Street quiet except for the hum of a passing car. He turned us back fast. Let's go in, now. Inside the yard, Ruth squinted at us. Well, nothing, Jamie said. His jaw was tight. I didn't contradict him. Not yet. We stepped back into the kitchen. The hum of the refrigerator felt too loud. Jamie locked the bolt, double-checked it, then leaned his forehead against the door for a beat. What did you take? I asked. He looked up, fished the shoelace from his pocket, set it on the counter. It sat there, limp, as if waiting to prove something. Kids, he said finally. Could be from a kid's shoe. Could have blown here. Could have been someone latching our gate, I said. He rubbed his temple. We're not jumping to. Not jumping, I snapped. Just saying what's in front of us. We stood there, tension snapping like static. Pepper barked once from outside, then stopped. Jamie broke first. Power's the real problem. Lights out in the alley, motion sensors shot. That's what makes this possible. We need visibility. And until then, he glanced at his planner on the table. We have to call it in. Report the outage. File a note about prowlers. Stay in. Wait. That word, wait, made my skin crawl. Waiting meant no control, just counting seconds, while something else decided the rhythm. The faucet dripped once, loud in the quiet. I turned, stared at it, half expecting green threads to coil out. Jamie followed my gaze. Don't, he said again, softer this time. We didn't move. Ruth's voice floated faint through the door. I'm heading in. You too, be careful. The crunch of her shoes faded up the driveway. The house sealed down to just us. Our breath, the shoelace. Then my phone buzzed on the counter. Screen lighting with the trail map app still open. Except the breadcrumb trail had changed. A new line traced from the Wilson River trailhead all the way into a neat grid of Portland streets, ending at a pin almost on top of our house. I shoved the phone toward Jamie. I didn't do this. He stared, face pale in the glow. Then who did? The faucet ticked again, metal cooling. Outside, the dragging sound started fresh, closer this time, and we were left with no choice but to decide whether to stay barricaded in or step into it, fast, before the night decided for us. The shoelace sat on the counter like a dare. Jamie pressed both hands flat on either side of it, jaw tight. We're not calling the cops yet, he said. We don't have enough. Not enough, I hissed. Our gate was hooked shut, and my phone I held it up, the breadcrumb trail glowing. Do you think I faked this? His eyes softened, then hardened again. I think maybe the app glitched, or cached some old GPS data. Happens all the time. The dragging noise outside thickened, closer now, like a wet broom across concrete. Pepper barked twice in the distance, then fell silent. Fine, I said. Then we do it your way. We get visibility. I grabbed the shoebox of batteries, shoved 2 into the headlamp, and flicked it on. The beam hit the ceiling like a lighthouse beam too close to shore. We sweep the perimeter. Then we decide. Jamie gave a small, reluctant nod. We started with the basement, the place that always feels damp, even after I run the dehumidifier. Jamie crouched by the small window well. No sign of tampering, he said, beam flicking over cobwebs and dead spiders. I checked the utility sink. It smelled faintly of river again. My stomach clenched. The water's not right, I said. Old pipes, Jamie muttered, though his hand lingered longer than it should have on the faucet. We moved room to room, living room, hallway, bedroom. Every lock double-checked, every blind tugged tight. I counted the steps, 24 down the hall, 12 back, until the rhythm felt like armor. Then came the side door. Jamie's hand hesitated on the knob. If it's just Ivy, we'll know. And if it's not, he didn't answer. We opened it together. The beam carved a tunnel through the ferns. Leaves glistened wet, brushing the siding. The latch on the gate hung loose now, hook swaying slightly as though recently freed. My pulse ticked in my throat. Jamie stepped out, his sneakers crunching gravel. I followed, socks instantly soaking. We made it 5 feet before something thumped hard against the fence. I flinched, dropped the shoebox. Batteries scattered, rolling under the ferns. Jamie swung the beam. Nothing, just boards and ivy. Wait, he said. He crouched, lifted one of the batteries. The dirt beneath it was scored with shallow lines, parallel, like rake marks. Animals, I whispered. Too straight. Something rattled above us. I jerked the beam upward and caught 2 glowing eyes staring down. My throat closed until the head resolved into a tabby cat perched on the gutter. It hissed once, leapt, and vanished into the dark. I sagged against the siding, pulse hammering. Jamie gave a shaky laugh. Misdirection, he said, like nomming it gave us back ground. But then he pointed to the fence again. The ivy was torn in strips, shredded as if pulled down by hand. The drag marks from earlier aligned with the rips. Someone or something had been moving through. We retreated inside. I shut the door harder than I meant to. My phone buzzed again. The breadcrumb line had advanced, now curling street by street, closer, as if something was actively moving it. Jamie saw my face, grabbed the phone. We shut it off. He held the power button until the screen went black. No more. But the silence after felt worse, like turning off a smoke alarm without checking for fire. Next step, he said, we drive to Ruth's. Stay there till morning. I nodded, relief flooding, until I remembered. Your bike's blocking the car. He swore under his breath. The garage was a tight box of shadows. The single bulb flickered when I yanked the chain. His bike leaned against the bumper of my hatchback. We started dragging it aside when the garage door shuddered violently. Jesus, I gasped, stumbling back. Jamie's headlamp beam caught the bottom panel vibrating. Someone, or the wind, pressing from outside. He killed the lamp instantly, mouthing SHH. We waited, every muscle taut. The rattling stopped. He whispered, "If it's someone, they know we're here." "Then we don't open it," I said. He exhaled. "We're boxed in, Nina." The bulb overhead hummed, then popped. Darkness swallowed us. I gripped his sleeve hard enough to leave marks. He fumbled for the wall switch, flicked it, nothing. Fuse blown or cut. We abandoned the garage. Back inside, my control was fraying. I could taste metal on my tongue. Jamie pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the outage line. At least get the alley light reported." He dialed, listened, jaw tightening. "Wait times 40 minutes, he muttered. "They've had multiple reports. So it's not just us." Relief, sharp and quick. But his eyes stayed hard. "No, which means we're not priority." My own phone, though powered off, buzzed in my pocket. I froze, pulled it out. The screen lit itself, trail map open, line blinking at our exact address. I dropped it. "Jamie, it's not off." He stared, then stomped it once with his sneaker, glass cracking. The line still blinked. Something outside banged against the siding hard, twice. Ruth's voice carried faint from across the way. "Everything all right?" Jamie shouted back, "We're fine." I wanted to scream that we weren't, but my throat was locked. He gripped my shoulders. "We can't wait this out. We need to move." "To where?" He swallowed. "Nearest lit street is Woodstock. 2 blocks. On foot, my stomach dropped. With whoever's. Point is, here's not safe." We both looked at the shoelace, still lying limp on the counter, and the broken phone, and the alley beyond the dark glass. The choice was no longer between checking or retreating. Staying was no longer retreat. It was cornering ourselves. Jamie grabbed the headlamp, shoved it onto my forehead. "Point of no return," he said. "We go now." And I knew he was right. We left the house through the front door, not the alley. Jamie insisted, fewer blind corners. I carried the headlamp. He had the shoebox of batteries tucked under his arm like a shield. The night was wet black, the air damp as a soaked sponge. My socks squished in my shoes, each step reminding me I hadn't dried off since the trail. 2 blocks, Jamie said. His voice tried steady, but I caught the tremor under it. We stick to the sidewalks. Avoid the alley. We cut across the small front yard. The neighbor's porch light buzzed, but gave no real glow. At the intersection, the street lamps flickered weak orange halos. Farther east, Woodstock Avenue glared bright and busy, a spine of safety. I kept my headlamp beam tight on the pavement. Drag marks lined the curb, shallow grooves where something heavy had been hauled. I almost stopped, but Jamie pushed me forward. "Don't," he whispered. "Eyes up." Halfway down the block, the sound started again. That dragging closer, keeping pace with us on the far side of the fence. "Run?" I asked. "Not yet." His hand closed around my wrist. A motion light flared at a house to our right, sudden and stark. In the burst of white, I saw ivy shreds clinging to chain link, green stains smeared across the sidewalk. And there, someone's shadow, tall, pausing just out of reach. "Hey," Jamie shouted, voice hard. "Who's there?" The shadow didn't move. My chest tightened until I couldn't breathe. Then the light blinked out. We were blind again. We pushed faster, shoes slapping pavement. My headlamp swung wild, slicing shapes out of hedges, recycling bins, low brick walls. A scrape behind us. A quick metallic clink, like a gate latch snapping. I turned, beam catching something pale dangling from the fence, another shoelace. Nodded, same as before. "They're marking," I gasped. "Keep moving," Jamie snapped. We reached the corner. The glow from Woodstock was stronger now, neon signs and headlights painting the damp air. I could hear the buzz of traffic, the hiss of tires. Civilization, so close. Then Pepper barked, sharp and desperate. Ruth's voice carried faint from behind us. "Get out of there." I froze. Jamie tugged my arm. "Don't stop." But I couldn't move. Ruth's house was behind us, her voice raw. Another bark cut short, then silence. "Jamie," I whispered. He yanked harder. "We can't. Nina, we can't go back." The dragging started again, fast this time, rushing down the alley parallel to us. My stomach flipped. Whoever it was, whatever, it was cutting us off. We sprinted. The sidewalk dipped, cracked by tree roots, and I stumbled. My knee smacked pavement, pain flaring sharp and hot. "Up," Jamie barked, hauling me by the elbow. "Come on." I limped, each step a jolt, but adrenaline shoved me forward. The dragging grew louder, then stopped. I swung the beam left, nothing. Right, nothing. My breath sawed in my throat. "Don't look," Jamie said. But then the beam caught it. A figure crouched low at the mouth of the alley. Hood up, sleeves ragged, one hand clutching something long and thin. Not a weapon exactly. A trekking pole. My trekking pole. "Jesus Christ," I muttered. Jamie froze. The figure rose, slow, deliberate. The pole scraped concrete as it moved toward us. I raised the headlamp, blinding them in the beam. For a second, the face was visible mud streaks, hair matted, eyes wide like an animal. Not a ghost, not a monster. A man. Alive, breathing, too close. "Stay back," Jamie shouted. He dropped the shoebox and grabbed a handful of gravel from the curb, flinging it hard. Rocks pinged off metal. The man flinched, but didn't retreat. He jabbed the trekking pole into the ground, dragging it forward again. I felt my control snapping, thread by thread. "Jamie," I whispered. He followed us from the trail. The man's lips moved, cracked, voice a rasp. "Home," just that word. Then he lunged. Jamie shoved me aside. The pole slashed past, scraping my arm. I screamed, stumbled onto my bad knee. Pain lanced through me. Jamie grappled with him, both hands on the pole. The man was wiry, fast, stronger than he looked. They slammed against the fence, wood rattling. I scrambled for the shoebox, fingers closing around cold batteries. I hurled one wild. It clipped the man's temple. He grunted, but didn't fall. Jamie shouted, "Nina, go." But I couldn't leave. I grabbed another handful of batteries, flung them like stones. One hit the pole, another bounced off his shoulder. He turned toward me, eyes catching the beam. For a second, I saw everything. Mud caked on his shoes, scratches up his arms, a knot of shoelaces dangling from his belt like trophies. Then Jamie wrenched the pole sideways. The man lost his balance, staggered. Jamie shoved hard. He toppled into the ivy, crashing against the fence with a hollow crack. He lay there, gasping. Jamie grabbed my arm. "Now we go." We limped the last half block, every step agony. The noise behind us started again, a dragging, slower this time, uneven. He was getting up. We reached Woodstock. Cars streamed past, headlights painting us bright. Jamie waved frantically, and a driver braked hard, horn blaring. "Help," Jamie shouted. "Call 911. The driver, a woman in her 40s, rolled down her window, phone already in hand. Behind us, the man staggered into the light, face twisted, pole dragging. The woman's eyes went wide, but the traffic, the lights, the witnesses, something in it broke his momentum. He froze, then bolted sideways into the dark, vanishing between houses. Police came 20 minutes later. Ruth was found shaken, but unhurt. Pepper had bitten through his leash and was hiding under her porch. They searched the alley, the yards, the ivy. They found shoelaces, dragged grooves, but not the man. At the curb, a paramedic wrapped my knee and the scrape on my arm. Jamie sat beside me, silent, hands still trembling. Across the street, my cracked phone lit up on the pavement where I dropped it. The breadcrumb line blinked once more, then disappeared. I stared until the screen went black. The ER waiting room at Providence smelled like antiseptic and overbrewed coffee. My knee was wrapped in a brace, the scrape on my arm flushed pink under gauze. A nurse had given me ibuprofen the size of horse pills, and now the ache sat heavy, dull, but insistent, a reminder every time I shifted. Jamie sat beside me, one hand gripping a styrofoam cup he hadn't touched. His knuckles were red, scabbed where gravel had dug in during the fight. He kept flexing his fingers like he wasn't sure they still worked. The officer, a woman about my age, hair pulled back tight, took notes in a thin black book. "You're saying you first noticed signs at your home. Dragging noises, tampered gate, strange residue in your water." "Yes," I said. My voice sounded flat, even to me. "It started after we hiked the Wilson River Trail. I can't explain how it connects, but I glanced at Jamie. He kept his eyes down. The officer nodded once, lips pressed. "We've had a few calls tonight in your neighborhood. Prowlers, power outages, suspicious activity. It's not isolated. She closed the book. We'll increase patrols. File your statements tonight. Follow up in the morning. For now, get some rest. Rest, the word sat sour. By the time we got home, dawn had smudged the sky gray. Ruth stood on her porch, Pepper tucked under one arm. She gave a small wave, tentative. I waved back with the arm that didn't sting. Come by later, she called, voice cracked from the long night. We'll compare notes. Sure, I said, though my throat closed around the word. Notes meant details. Details meant memory. I didn't want either. Inside, the house was a crime scene in miniature. Batteries scattered across the kitchen tile, shoebox half crushed, blinds tilted wrong. The faucet dripped once, twice, then stopped on its own. Jamie locked the bolt, checked it twice. He moved through the rooms like he was teaching a lesson, methodical, listing tasks aloud. Close the blinds. Reset the alarm. Replace the bulb in the garage. His voice was calm, but his shoulders were tight as cable wire. I sat on the couch, brace pinching my skin. My phone lay on the coffee table where the officer had set it after bagging and unbagging it. The screen was cracked, but dark now. No blinking lines, no phantom maps, just dead glass. Still, I couldn't bring myself to touch it. Sleep didn't come. Every sound drew my eyes. The fridge hum, a car door slamming 3 blocks away, the faint scrape of ivy shifting against the fence. At noon, I gave up and limped into the kitchen. Jamie was already there, sorting through a pile of shoelaces from our closet. He untied each one, smoothing them flat, lining them up in pairs. "What are you doing?" I asked. His jaw tightened, making sure none are missing. I leaned against the counter, suddenly lightheaded. "And if they are?" He didn't answer. He kept lining them up precise, even like order could erase what we'd seen. That evening, Ruth came by with a notepad. She'd written times down in her neat postal handwriting. When she heard Pepper bark, when she saw the motion light flare, when she called out to us. Jamie scanned it, nodded. It matches what we saw. She hesitated at the door, eyes flicking to my brace. You two should think about staying somewhere else for a while. Hotel, family. Just until the police, she trailed off. We'll manage, Jamie said firmly. I forced a smile I didn't feel. Thanks, Ruth. When she left, Jamie tore the notepad page out, folded it, and slipped it into his planner. Like evidence, like a test key. The next day, the city fixed the alley light. It buzzed steady yellow through our blinds. I should have felt relief, but instead it cast the ivy in stark shadows that moved when the wind touched them. I tried running again, a week later, braced tight around my knee. The rhythm was off. My body didn't trust the pavement. Every root crack felt like a tripwire, every corner like a blind trap. I cut the route short, walked home, and sat on the porch steps counting breaths until the numbers blurred. Jamie buried himself in lesson plans. His voice was even again, but I noticed the way he flinched at sudden noises, how he checked the locks 3 times before bed. One night, I woke to dripping. Not in the kitchen this time, from the bathroom sink. I padded in, brace creaking, flipped on the light. The faucet gleamed. A single bead of water slid down the metal and hung fat at the end. It smelled faintly of river, but maybe that was my mind. On the mirror, in the corner where the steam usually fogs first, a streak of green clung. Ivy leaf, soap scum. I reached out. It smeared under my finger, faint, almost gone. Jamie's voice came from the bedroom, thick with sleep. "Nina, you okay?" I wiped my hand on a towel. "Yeah, just turning off the tap." The police never found the man. They told us it happens, someone living rough, drifting through neighborhoods, scavenging. Maybe he'd moved on. Maybe he hadn't. We filed it away, like you do with something unsolvable. But each time I lace up my shoes, I notice the knots, the way they cinch. Each time I wash my hands, I wait for the faint tang of creek water. The house is quiet now, normal mostly, except when it is. Hey everyone, this is Mia Horror Stories, and the title of today's horror story is "The Hotel Clerk Told Me Not to Enter Room 103. For your comfort, the screen will stay black throughout the video, so you can relax without strain and just focus on the story. Make sure you stick around until the end. Sometimes the last few moments are the ones that stay with you the longest. The fluorescent hallway light flickered again, buzzing low like a broken radio, casting a sickly yellow pall over the peeling wallpaper. I noticed it just as I reached the end of the corridor, by the stairwell door that was always propped open, revealing nothing but a black hole of cement steps spiraling down into some kind of basement or crawl space. There was a faint, damp smell, something like mold mixed with the stale odor of cigarette smoke. It wasn't the kind of smell you noticed at first, more like a subconscious fog settling in your sinuses, nagging but ignorable. I stopped and looked back at the rows of doors lining the hall. All plain, numbered in faded brass plaques, except one, room 103. The door was slightly ajar. I don't know why I saw that before anything else. The odd angle of the door, the thin sliver of darkness inside the room where the light should have been on. All the other doors were shut, but this one was open, just enough for the old hinges to creak softly with the draft. I was halfway down this corridor because the front desk clerk had told me to go upstairs and check if my room was ready. But as soon as I spotted the door, I stopped. It felt wrong. Before I could move closer, the door slammed shut with a sharp bang that echoed louder than it had any right to in this tired old building. It sounded deliberate, angry almost, but I was alone. That's when I realized something else was off. No footsteps, no voices, no sound of the TV or radio from the other rooms. Usually, this place hummed quietly with the low buzz of guests moving about or the distant thrum of the highway just outside. Tonight, nothing. The clerk, who I had just left behind, had warned me not to go near room 103. It was almost a joke at first, Some weird local superstition, maybe. But now, standing here, it felt serious. I turned back down the hall and found him leaning against the chipped counter under a flickering fluorescent bulb. A half smile on his face, like he knew I was overthinking everything. "Room 103, he said, voice low, like he was sharing a secret. "Just leave it alone." He was a thin man in his late 40s, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that didn't quite meet mine. His name tag read Carl. "Why?" I asked, forcing a casual tone. "Is it booked?" Carl shrugged, fingers tapping rhythmically on the counter. "No one's supposed to stay in there. Maintenance, been after it for months, but the owner won't shut it down. Old wiring, some water damage. Nothing dangerous, just weird noises." I laughed, the sound brittle. "Weird noises." "Yeah." He glanced down the hall like he half expected something to come out of 103 and grab him. "People say they hear things. Doors opening, furniture moving. But I've never seen anything. Just stay clear, all right." I nodded, but curiosity was already curling in my gut. The hotel itself was a tired relic perched on the edge of a small town in northern Vermont. Built in the late 1920s, it had seen better days, with peeling paint on the outside, a lobby smelling faintly of old leather and pine cleaner, and a creaky elevator that juddered between floors like it might fall apart any minute. But it was cheap, which is why I was here, escaping the city for a few days of quiet. I'm Sarah, 32, freelance graphic designer, terrible at unplugging from work, even on vacation. I'd arrived that afternoon, lugging a suitcase that was already scuffed and battered from too many trips. I just wanted a bed and a shower, maybe some decent coffee. Instead, I got Carl's warning and a creeping sense of something unspoken hanging in the air. As I checked in, a woman passed by the lobby door, a young girl, maybe 17, with dark hair tied back in a ponytail, wearing a faded band tee and ripped jeans. She glanced at me, then at the sign for room 103, her lips tightening briefly, like she recognized the number but didn't want to say anything. "Hey," I called after her. "Do you stay here?" She stopped, eyes sharp but guarded. Sometimes. Her voice was soft but had a wary edge. Not near 103, though. Before I could ask more, she disappeared into the stairwell. That night, I lay in the bed of room 207, the thin mattress creaking beneath me. Outside the window, the wind rattled the old panes, and the highway's distant hum pulsed faintly. I stared at the ceiling, trying to shake the unease creeping into my chest. My phone buzzed, no signal except spotty 4G, but enough for messages. I flipped it open and saw a text from my brother. "Be safe. Don't wander." He'd always been the cautious one, the practical one. Maybe too practical. But I couldn't shake the feeling that tonight, something was watching from the edges of this place. Something small, human, but off. The corridor outside was quiet, except for the occasional thud or creak from the floorboards. But at 2:13 a.m., I heard a faint knock, soft, deliberate, coming from the direction of room 103. I froze, breathing shallow. Should I ignore it? Or check, just to be sure it wasn't someone in trouble? I didn't answer the knocking at first. My heart pounded too loud in my ears, the kind of sharp, jerky beat that made your whole chest feel like it might explode. I stared at the closed door of room 103 across the hall, willing myself to ignore it. But then the knocking came again, more insistent, urgent. I grabbed my phone, thumb hovering over the flashlight app. The battery was low. I could almost hear the faint hiss of it draining faster in the cold air of the hallway. I told myself it was probably some drunk or a kid playing a prank. But the knocking wasn't random. It was steady, deliberate. I sighed, tugged on my jacket, and stepped into the corridor, my shoes clicking softly on the worn linoleum floor. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, one flickering right above room 103's door, casting short shadows that jittered with every flicker. "Hey," I called quietly. "Is someone there?" No answer. I pressed my ear against the cold wood of the door. The knocking had stopped. Only silence now. But then I caught it, a faint, rhythmic tapping from inside, like nails on wood. I took a step back, heart hammering. I should just leave it. But my curiosity was clawing up my throat, thick and bitter. Before I could decide, the stairwell door at the end of the hall creaked open, and Carl appeared. His face was drawn, his eyes darker than before, like he hadn't slept. "You shouldn't be out here," he said, voice low but sharp. "I heard knocking, thought someone might be hurt," I said. Carl shook his head. "It's not safe. The wiring in 103 is shot. Could spark a fire or worse. I told you to stay away." "Why isn't it fixed then?" His jaw tightened. "Owner's stubborn. Won't close the room. Says it's part of the charm or some nonsense." I frowned. "But what about the noises? The door slamming?" Carl glanced down the hall, then back to me. "Old buildings make noises. Pipes settling. But lately the sounds have been different." "Different how?" He hesitated, like someone's inside, but no one's supposed to be. That's when the power blinked. The lights flickered and went out entirely. The hallway plunged into near darkness, the only illumination coming from the weak glow of my phone's flashlight. A cold draft swept past us, carrying a faint smell of smoke. "Damn it," Carl muttered, fumbling for the breaker box near the stairwell. "Looks like the wiring finally giving out." I swallowed, feeling the weight of the silence pressing down. The only sounds were our breathing and the distant hum of the highway, now muffled. "Do you think it's a fire?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Carl shook his head. "Not yet, but the wiring could short circuit any second." "Then what do we do?" He glanced at room 103's door, which now seemed even more ominous in the dim light. "We have to get everyone out. Evacuate the floor." My throat tightened. "Is there time? What about the guests?" Carl pulled out his phone, but the screen was dead. "No signal," he said grimly. "Cell towers are down or overloaded." I thought about the young woman from earlier and the other guests scattered in their rooms. My own fear suddenly sharpened. I hated feeling powerless, out of control. When I was stressed, I froze or overthought. Maybe this was my chance to act instead. "Let's go," I said, voice firmer than I felt. "We'll knock on doors, get people moving." We moved quickly down the hallway. Carl rattled the first door. Evacuation. Please come out. No answer. The second door creaked open a crack. A man, maybe late 50s, bleary-eyed and confused, peeked out. Power out, Carl said. You need to leave now. The man rubbed his eyes. What about my stuff? No time, I said sharply. It's not safe. He hesitated, but stepped into the hall. The next door, room 103. The door was closed again. No knocking, no sounds. Carl stopped and looked at me. I can't open that door. It's boarded up from the inside. Boarded up, my voice caught. Yeah, he said. Looks like someone barricaded themselves in there. My heart skipped. Who? Why? Carl shook his head. No idea. Owners never mentioned anyone staying there. But the maintenance guy said he heard shouting a few days ago. I felt a cold pulse in my gut. Shouting. Carl nodded. Could be someone squatting, or worse. The wind rattled the windows, and through the weak glow of my phone light, I saw fresh scratch marks along the edge of the door frame, rough, desperate. We have to call the police, I said urgently. Carl grimaced. No signal, you saw. We'll find the landline. He nodded. Downstairs, but with the power out, it might not work. My pulse was racing now, not just fear, but a gnawing frustration with myself for ever coming here. I hated unpredictability. I wanted control. But here, in this half-lit, decaying building, I had neither. Suddenly, a thud echoed from inside room 103, like something heavy slammed against the door. Carl and I froze. The door shook. Then a voice, a harsh, low shout. Get out. The sound was human, angry, terrified. Carl looked at me. We can't wait. If they're barricaded in and the wiring's sparking, it could go up in flames any minute. I swallowed hard, my decision clear even if my legs trembled. We have to open that door. Carl hesitated, then pulled a crowbar from behind the counter near the stairwell. As he jimmied the door, the lights flickered weakly back on, casting the hallway into uneven pools of yellow and shadow. The door creaked and groaned under the force, and then a scream cut through the air. The door gave way with a sickening crack, the boards splintering under Carl's crowbar. A rush of stale, heavy air spilled out, carrying the scent of sweat, old smoke, and something fouler, something like rotting wood mixed with damp fabric. The faint glow of a broken lamp inside flickered, casting long shadows across the cramped room. Carl and I stepped inside cautiously. The narrow space felt smaller than I'd imagined, cluttered with overturned furniture, a broken chair, a nightstand smashed against the wall, and walls stained with peeling wallpaper that hung in strips. Jesus, Carl muttered. Looks like a tornado hit this place. My flashlight beam swept across the room, catching a figure slumped against the far wall. A man, maybe mid-30s, dirty and unshaven, his eyes wide and wild. Hey, I said softly, stepping forward. It's okay. We're here to help. The man's lips trembled. You shouldn't have come, he whispered. Who are you? Why are you barricaded in here? He shook his head, then winced, clutching his left arm. No one listens. No one ever listens. Carl moved closer. Are you hurt? We can get you medical help." The man looked around nervously, like he expected someone or something to burst through the walls. "They're coming back." "Who's coming back?" I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, a cough ripped from his chest, wet and ragged. Blood flecked his lips. Carl frowned. "We need to get him out." I nodded, crouching to examine the injury. His arm was bruised and swollen, probably broken. Suddenly, the ceiling above us creaked ominously. Dust drifted down like ash. "Shit," Carl said. "The wiring must have caused some structural damage." I grabbed the man's good arm, supporting his weight. "Let's move." We edged toward the door, but as I turned the knob, it jammed. The old frame had swollen in the damp air. Carl shoved against it with his shoulder. "Give me a second." Behind us, a sudden loud bang echoed from the far corner. A heavy thud, followed by a scraping sound. I whipped around, flashlight shaking. "Jesus, what now?" Carl hissed. The beam landed on a toppled bookcase, leaning precariously against the wall. It was swaying, threatening to fall. I lunged forward, grabbing the edge just as it toppled, pinning my wrist beneath its weight. A sharp pain shot through my arm. I bit back a scream, trying not to panic. "Sarah," Carl yelled, dropping the crowbar to help lift the heavy wood. After a few tense seconds, we freed my wrist. It throbbed, skin reddened where it had been crushed. "Careful," Carl snapped. "We're not out of this yet." I nodded, gritting my teeth. The adrenaline was fatting, leaving exhaustion in its wake. My breath came fast, chest tight. Carl tried the door again. This time, it gave way with a creak, and we spilled into the hallway. The flickering lights had returned, though some bulbs were still dead, casting uneven shadows that jittered along the walls. "Let's get you downstairs," I said to the man. He hesitated, eyes darting to room 103's door, now open behind us. "They'll find me," he said, voice cracking. "Who?" I asked again, heart sinking. He looked at me, fear raw and exposed. "The ones who made me this way." Before I could press further, a sudden sound echoed from the stairwell, a sharp clang followed by a muffled shout. Carl's face tightened. "Stay here." He headed toward the stairwell, and I followed, supporting the man between us. We descended the narrow, steep staircase that led to the lobby. The steps creaked underfoot, the air growing colder and damper with each step. I noticed the walls were stained with watermarks, some areas covered in mold. Halfway down, the power flickered again and went out. The stairwell plunged into darkness, my phone's flashlight the only thing keeping us from stumbling. A distant, scraping noise echoed below metal on concrete. I tightened my grip on the man, pulse quickening. At the bottom, the lobby was in chaos. Furniture overturned, a toppled vase shattered across the floor, and the front door wide open, slamming against the wall with every gust of wind. A figure darted out into the night, too fast to catch. "Did you see that?" I whispered. Carl nodded grimly. "Someone been here, or still is." I scanned the shadows near the open door, heart pounding. Suddenly, a loud banging came from the back storage room. We exchanged a look, but cautiously moved toward it. Carl grabbed the handle and yanked the door open. Inside was nothing but stacked boxes and cleaning supplies. False alarm, he said, trying to sound reassuring. I exhaled shakily, but then noticed something. A trail of muddy footprints leading from the storage room back toward the lobby entrance. Looks like someone's been running through here, I said. Carl frowned. Could be homeless or someone trying to hide. We turned back toward the stairs when a sudden metallic clang echoed from the second floor above us. God, what now? Carl groaned. We have to check, I said. We raced back up the stairs, the weight of the injured man slowing us. On the second floor landing, the lights flickered again, then steadied. Down the hall near room 103, I spotted something strange. A stray hotel keycard lying on the floor, bent and scratched. I picked it up. No one's supposed to have that, Carl said, voice low. Could it belong to the man? I wondered aloud. Before we could discuss further, a harsh whisper floated down the corridor. Get out. I froze, heart hammering. Carl shone his flashlight down the hall. The shadows seemed to stretch and twitch. Probably just the wind, he said, though his voice betrayed his doubt. I took a slow step forward, but a sudden loud crash from room 101 made me jump. We hurried over. The door was ajar, swinging slightly. Inside, the room was empty, but the window was wide open, curtains billowing in the cold breeze. Carl exhaled. Probably a guest forgot to close it. I nodded, though the unease remained. The injured man shifted beside me, groaning softly. We need to get out, I said firmly. Carl looked around, then back at me. The front door's open, but we can't leave the man unattended. I glanced at the stairwell, then the hall behind us. We don't have a choice. The injured man looked between us, eyes pleading. Help me down, he whispered. As we prepared to move again, the lights flickered violently. The buzzing overhead reached a high-pitched whine. Then silence. The emergency lights kicked on, glowing a dull red, and through the crackling radio static from the lobby's old walkie-talkie, sitting on the front desk, a desperate voice burst through. Evacuate now. Fire in the electrical room. Flames are spreading fast. The flames were already licking up the walls when we hit the lobby. Smoke curled thick and hot, snaking through the cracked windows and staining the faded wallpaper with grimy black streaks. The fire alarm shrieked somewhere beyond the thick plaster, but the old wiring was so fried it barely worked. Carl shoved the injured man forward. Come on, we have to get outside. I grabbed the man's good arm, feeling the sweat slick beneath my fingers. His breathing was shallow, ragged. The bruised arm hung uselessly at his side. We stumbled toward the front exit, but the open door slammed shut with a deafening bang, pushed by a sudden gust. My heart leapt, and I darted to grab the handle. It was stuck, swollen wood, or maybe heat warping the frame. Carl cursed under his breath and joined me, their combined strength barely budging the door. Behind us, the fire's roar grew louder. The heat was unbearable now, making my skin itch and sting even beneath my jacket. Smoke filled the lobby, thickening like fog, choking the air. I coughed hard, eyes streaming. There has to be another way, I gasped. Carl pointed toward the side door by the stairwell. emergency exit, but I don't know if it's unlocked. We fought through the choking smoke and splintered furniture toward the door. I fumbled for the handle, burning fingers slick with sweat. It turned with a jerk. A gush of cold air hit us like a slap when the door swung open. Relief surged, but the scene outside was no less harrowing. The parking lot was chaotic. A few cars with their lights on, guests clustered together, some on phones, others shouting. The sky was pitch black, pierced by the orange glow of the fire reflected on the clouds. The injured man stumbled, nearly falling. I caught him, but he whispered, "Wait, they're still here." Before I could ask, a voice came from the shadows near the building's corner, a rough, angry shout. Another figure emerged, stepping into the parking lot's harsh light. It was a man, mid-40s, face hard and weathered, eyes flashing with something fierce. Carl stiffened. "It's him, the one from 103. "Who?" I asked, voice barely audible over the crackling fire. "The owner's brother. Comes around sometimes to check on things or to scare people off. We thought he was gone for good." The man took a step forward. "You shouldn't have come in here," he growled. "Help," the injured man croaked, gripping my arm tightly. The owner's brother sneered. "This place is mine, and he belongs inside." Carl stepped between us. "We're getting out, no trouble." The man's gaze flicked to the burning hotel, then back to us. He spat on the ground. "You're all fools." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from behind us. The fire had spread faster than we thought, licking at the dry grass, edging the parking lot. Flames crept closer. "Move," I shouted, dragging the injured man away from the snarling figure. We ran toward a cluster of cars, guests yelling and waving for emergency services. My lungs burned, and every breath was a fight. I glanced back. The owner's brother stood frozen, watching the fire consume everything. Paramedics arrived moments later, their flashing lights cutting through the smoky night. They rushed to the injured man, loading him onto a stretcher. Carl and I stood on the sidewalk, watching as firefighters battled the blaze, water arcing over the building's collapsing roof. The adrenaline finally drained out of me, replaced by a hollow exhaustion that settled deep in my bones. I looked at Carl. "Do you think anyone else made it out?" He shook his head slowly. "I'm not sure. The fire's too fast." The hospital would be full of questions, and I knew I'd be haunted by what I hadn't seen and what I had. That night, I learned how fragile control could be, and how quickly the past, like the fire, could consume everything you thought was safe. The early morning light was weak and gray when I finally sat down on the cracked curb outside the burned-out hotel. The acrid scent of smoke still clung to my clothes, mixing with the sharp tang of spilled gasoline and something deeper, something like loss. The fire trucks had been gone for hours, the last embers hissing in the rubble where room 103 had stood. I watched as firefighters carefully sifted through the debris, their faces set with exhaustion and quiet determination. Some of the guests had left or been taken away by family or friends. Others, like me and Carl, were lingering in a limbo between disbelief and relief. Carl sat a few feet away, nursing a coffee from a trembling hand. His usual sharp eyes were dulled, and his posture sagged in a way that made him seem smaller somehow. "I don't know what's worse," he said quietly. "The fire, or what we didn't do before it started." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. The hotel had been a slow, burning secret long before the flames. And now, the truth was charred beneath the rubble. The injured man from room 103 was taken to the hospital. Carl told me later he had a name, Tom, but not much else. Tom refused to talk much, only whispering about them and what they did before falling silent again. The authorities kept a close watch, but with no clear evidence and no one willing to testify, the mystery remained tangled in shadows. I found myself replaying the night over and over, the flicker of the lights, the scratches on the doorframe, the desperate fear in Tom's eyes. The man who showed up outside, the owner's brother, had vanished after the fire, slipping into the night as quietly as he had appeared. Back at my apartment, the hum of the city was almost comforting. The streets buzzed with cars, people rushing to work, the normal chaos of everyday life. Yet inside me, a quiet unease had settled. The experience left a lingering edge, like a faint vibration under the skin that never quite stopped. I caught myself staring at my phone, at messages from my brother urging me to stay safe, calls from Carl trying to make sense of what happened, emails from work piling up, unread. For the first time in a long while, I didn't want to answer any of it. In the days that followed, I learned that the hotel's owner had been under investigation for years. Accusations of neglect, dangerous living conditions, and worse. But the legal system moved slowly, and with the building gone, much evidence was lost. Carl eventually quit his job, unable to bear the memories. He moved to a smaller town, seeking quiet and distance, though I suspected neither would come easily. As for me, I returned to my designs and deadlines, but something fundamental had shifted. The hotel was gone, but the feeling that I'd barely scratched the surface of something darker lingered. One evening, I received a package. No return address. Inside was a single hotel keycard, the same battered, scratched card from the hallway that night. It was impossible to know who had sent it or why. But the tiny weight of it in my hand reminded me that some doors never fully close. That's it for this nightmare. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and turn on notifications. It really helps keep the stories alive. And don't stop here. Dive into another one of our videos and keep the fear going.